Forget everything you think you know about success. The relentless chase for wealth is a trap, and today, we're watching that trap spring shut on a man who had it all. This isn't a fairy tale, it's the story of a harsh, necessary collapse. It's about a spoiled heir who lost every single penny of his fortune, ending up humiliated on the streets. But his real story didn't end there. It truly began when a poor family, with almost nothing to their name, took him in to teach him a powerful lesson about true love. Get ready to meet Kyle Hicks, a man who had everything: the cars, the mansions, the power, but possessed absolutely nothing of real value. His world was a fortress of privilege, cold and empty. Then, in a single day, it all came crashing down. Now, picture the Barnes family, especially their daughter London. They live a life with barely enough to get by, yet their tiny home is overflowing with a richness Kyle's billions could never buy: kindness, warmth, and genuine connection. This isn't just a story about losing money, it's a powerful emotional journey. About what happens when a man who despises poverty is forced to rely on it for survival. It's a story about a second chance, about a difficult path to redemption, and the surprising plot twist of destiny that brings two souls from opposite worlds. Together, we're going to explore whether true love can truly conquer a lifetime of arrogance and if kindness is powerful enough to heal the deepest wounds. Prepare yourself for an unforgettable love story that will challenge everything you think you know about success and happiness. This is a story of being humiliated to become humble, of overcoming not the world, but ourselves. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in a vault, but in the compassionate heart of another person. The story of Kyle and London will stick with you long after it's over. Before we dive into this incredible journey, help us build our community of story lovers. Please take a moment to comment below and let us know what beautiful city or country you're watching from today. We love to see how far our stories travel and connect us all. And if you believe in the power of a second chance, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to our channel so you never miss a new story, and share this with someone you think will be touched by this message. Your support means the world to us. Now let's begin. Well, it's a funny thing, isn't it? One minute you're on top of the world, the next you're finding out what asphalt tastes like. For Kyle Hicks, this wasn't just a bad day, it was the complete, utter collapse of a reality he thought was bulletproof. The life of a truly spoiled heir had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the ghost of a lost fortune and the biting cold of a city that suddenly felt alien and hostile. He was, for the first time, utterly and hopelessly alone. The sting of the situation was more than just financial, it was a deep, soul-crushing blow. He felt profoundly humiliated, a feeling so foreign it was almost paralyzing. Every passing car, every averted gaze from a stranger felt like a personal judgment on his failure. This emotional turmoil was a far heavier burden than his empty pockets. Had lost more than money, had lost the identity that had been handed to him on a silver platter, a harsh plot twist orchestrated by destiny itself. He replayed the events in his mind, a torturous loop of bad decisions and misplaced trust. Where did it all go wrong? It seemed impossible that a fortune built over generations could crumble so fast. This wasn't just a setback, this was annihilation. The story of Kyle Hicks, the golden boy, had ended, and now a new, much darker chapter was beginning. He was a walking ghost, haunted by the echoes of laughter in penthouse suites and the clinking of champagne glasses, a stark contrast to his new reality. Gone were the designer suits, replaced by clothes that were quickly losing their last shred of dignity. He was a cliché he once would have scoffed at, a living cautionary tale. The irony was so thick he could almost choke on it. This harsh new world was a brutal teacher, and its first lesson was despair. This overwhelming sense of loss set the stage for a journey of overcoming he couldn't yet imagine, a path toward an unexpected redemption. Night fell like a final curtain, bringing with it a more profound sense of dread. The city lights, once a symbol of his playground, now mocked him with their warmth and brilliance. Each illuminated window was a glimpse into a life he no longer had access to. This raw, emotional vulnerability was terrifying. He was just another shadow among many, a forgotten soul whose story was seemingly over before it had even truly begun, a prelude to a most surprising love story. He huddled in a damp alleyway, the concrete unforgivingly cold against his body, a pathetic throne for a dethroned king. He was the epitome of a spoiled heir brought to his knees, utterly broken. The silence of the night was suddenly broken by the soft sound of approaching footsteps, a gentle, hesitant sound that didn't belong in a place like this. A glimmer of kindness in the dark, perhaps. A second chance was about to appear in the most unexpected form. The footsteps belonged to an older man, his face etched with the lines of a hard life, but his eyes holding a surprising warmth. This was Mr. Barnes, the patriarch of a poor family with a wealth of a different kind. He saw not a failed heir, but a soul in need, a heart-aching sight he couldn't just walk past. Without a moment's hesitation, he offered Kyle a hand, a gesture so genuine it caught the once-proud young man completely off guard. This simple act of kindness felt like a lifeline in an ocean of despair. He was brought to a small, humble home, bursting at the seams with life and a sense of togetherness had never known. The Barnes family, despite having so little, offered him everything they could: a warm meal, a clean blanket, and a roof over his head. It was a testament to their character, a beacon of hope in his darkest hour. This was the beginning of an unlikely love story, born from a moment of pure, unadulterated compassion. For a man who had lost a fortune, this small gesture felt priceless. However, not everyone was so quick to welcome the stranger. London Barnes, the daughter, watched from the doorway with quiet concern. Her eyes, intelligent and perceptive, saw more than just a man in need. She saw the ghost of arrogance clinging to him, the shadow of a spoiled heir who knew nothing of their world. She worried that this act of kindness might bring trouble to her family, a family that had already weathered so many storms. Her intuition was screaming, a silent alarm in the warm household. London's reluctance wasn't born of malice, but of a fierce, protective love for her family. They had so little to lose, which made any risk feel monumental. This stranger, Kyle Hicks, was a variable she couldn't account for, a wild card in their carefully managed life of overcoming daily struggles. Her silence was heavy with unspoken questions, a quiet tension that contrasted with her parents' open-hearted generosity. She wondered if this was destiny or a mistake. Despite her reservations, she didn't voice her dissent, respecting her father's decision. But she watched Kyle's every move, her gaze analytical and missing nothing. She saw the way he recoiled from the worn furniture, the faint curl of his lip at the simple food. It confirmed her fears he was a world away from them, a man humiliated by circumstance but not yet humbled. This was not a guest, in his eyes, but a prisoner of his own misfortune. And so Kyle found himself in an unfamiliar limbo, a temporary resident in a life he couldn't comprehend. He was a puzzle piece that didn't fit, an anomaly in the heart of this poor family. The quiet concern in London Barnes' eyes was a mirror, reflecting a truth about himself he wasn't ready to face. He was an outsider, and her silent judgment was a challenge he didn't even know he was supposed to accept. Let's be honest, gratitude wasn't exactly Kyle's strong suit. In his mind, the Barnes home was nothing more than a pit stop, a temporary and rather unpleasant detour on his presumed journey back to greatness. He scoffed at their simple life, the mismatched furniture, the worn-out books, the very air of contentment they seemed to breathe. He saw their kindness not as a gift, but as a condescending pat on the back, an insult to the man he used to be. The former spoiled heir was still very much alive in spirit. He treated their home like a waiting room, a temporary inconvenience he had to endure. He'd spend hours staring out the window, lost in memories of his lost fortune, completely oblivious to the warmth and life happening around him. The family's attempts at conversation were met with curt, one-word answers. He was building a wall around himself, brick by brick, determined not to let this place, this poor family, get under his skin. It was a defense mechanism for his humiliated pride. The taste of their simple home-cooked meals was bland to a palate. Accustomed to Michelin stars, the shared bathroom was an indignity. The very idea of their charity felt like a weight, a debt he had no intention of ever acknowledging, let alone repaying. This wasn't a second chance in his eyes, it was a prison of poverty. Every heart-aching gesture they made was to him a reminder of how far he had fallen, a stark and painful emotional trigger. London watched him, her initial concern solidifying into a quiet disappointment. She saw his disdain, his ungratefulness, and it stung. Her family had offered this man a piece of their already small world, and he treated it like dirt on his shoe. She saw no flicker of redemption, only the smoldering embers of arrogance. The plot twist destiny had thrown at him hadn't taught him a thing, it seemed. He was still the same man, just without the money. He failed to see the richness in their livest laughter that filled the small kitchen, the stories shared over dinner, the unwavering support they had for one another. This was a currency he had never understood. His world had been transactional, built on what people could do for him. The concept of unconditional kindness was as foreign as the worn-out quilt on his cot. He was blind to the true love that held this family together. And so, he existed in a bubble of his own making, a ghost in their home, waiting for a surprise rescue that wasn't coming. He was so focused on what he had lost that he couldn't see what was being offered to him. But life, and the Barnes family, had a funny way of breaking down even the most stubborn walls. A new challenge was about to be presented, one that would test his pride in a very different way. Mr. Barnes, being a practical man, believed in the dignity of work. He saw the idleness eating away at Kyle and, with his characteristic kindness, offered him a job. It was simple, honest manual labor stacking wood, fixing a leaky fence, the kind of work that built calluses on your hands and character in your soul. To Mr. Barnes, it was an offer of purpose, a way for the young man to contribute and regain a sense of self-worth. It was a chance at overcoming his circumstances. But for Kyle Hicks, the spoiled heir, the offer landed like a slap in the face. Work? With his hands? It was unthinkable, utterly humiliating. His pride, the last remnant of his old life, swelled up like a defensive shield. He looked at the calloused hands of London's father and felt a wave of revulsion. He, who had once managed multi-million-dollar deals from a leather chair, was now being asked to perform tasks he considered beneath him. This was a new low. Despite his inner turmoil, he reluctantly agreed, mostly to stop the well-meaning glances from the family. But his heart wasn't in it. His body, soft and unused to physical exertion, betrayed him at every turn. He couldn't hammer a nail straight. He dropped planks of wood on his foot, and he was left breathless after a few minutes of carrying supplies. Each failure was a small public humiliation, chipping away at his fragile ego, especially under London's watchful gaze. London observed the whole sad spectacle. There was a part of her that almost felt sorry for him, but it was overshadowed by a growing frustration. It wasn't his inability that bothered her, it was his attitude. He approached each task with a sigh, a sneer, as if the work itself was personally offending him. He wasn't just failing, he was refusing to even try. She saw a man so trapped by his own pride that he couldn't accept a helping hand, let alone a tool. His frustration quickly curdled into anger. He threw down the hammer, cursing under his breath, blaming the tools, the sun, anything but his own incompetence and arrogance. This wasn't the powerful man who lost a fortune. This was a petulant child throwing a tantrum. The emotional outburst laid him bare, exposing the frightened, insecure person hiding beneath the layers of bravado. It was a painful, raw, and heart-aching moment of vulnerability. This spectacular failure at the most basic of tasks was a turning point. He had hit a new bottom, one defined not by a lack of money, but by a lack of capability. He was useless. The realization was a cold, hard shock to his system. And as he stood there, covered in sawdust and shame, he felt a gentle presence beside him. A different kind of offer was about to be made, one that his pride would find much harder to refuse. Just as Kyle was about to spiral into a pit of self-pity, London stepped in. She didn't mock him or scold him. Instead, she quietly picked up the hammer he had thrown down. "You're holding it wrong," she said, her voice calm and even. There was no judgment in her tone, only simple, direct instruction. She began to patiently show him the rhythm of the work, the way to let the tool do the heavy lifting. Her kindness was a surprise he didn't see coming. As he watched her, something inside him shifted. He was struck by the grace and dignity with which she moved. Her hands, though not soft, were skilled and confident. She worked with an efficiency and purpose that was almost mesmerizing. Here she was, a young woman from a poor family, teaching him, the supposedly brilliant spoiled heir, the most basic of skills. The irony was not lost on him. He felt a flicker of admiration, a completely new and emotional response. London explained the work not as a chore, but as a craft. You have to respect the wood, she'd say, understand how it wants to bend. She spoke of her father's work with a deep-seated pride that Kyle had never felt for his own effortless inheritance. In her world, value wasn't inherited, it was built, piece by piece, with your own two hands. He was witnessing a form of wealth he had never known existed, a heart-aching lesson in humility. He started to listen, really listen, for the first time. He followed her lead, mimicking her movements. Slowly, awkwardly at first, he began to get the hang of it. With each nail he successfully hammered in, a small piece of his toxic pride crumbled away. He was learning more than just manual labor. He was learning about patience, about perseverance, about the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. This was the beginning of his true redemption. He found himself watching London, not just as a teacher, but as a person. He noticed the way she'd bite her lip when she was concentrating, the easy smile she shared with her father, the unwavering strength in her eyes. She was a woman who faced the struggles of poverty every day, yet she carried herself with more dignity than any of the heiresses he had ever known. His perception of her, and of himself, was undergoing a monumental plot twist. The days of working alongside her started to change him. The physical labor was hard, but the emotional transformation was even more profound. He was being rebuilt, just like the fence he was helping to mend. He was starting to see the world not through the lens of his lost fortune, but through the clear, compassionate eyes of London Barnes. And he was beginning to realize that she was far more interesting than any business deal he had ever closed. One afternoon, while running an errand in town with London, the inevitable happened. Kyle spotted two of his former associates, men he once called friends, laughing outside a lavish restaurant. They saw him at the same moment, and their laughter turned to sneering mockery. Their words, dripping with condescension, cut through the air like daggers. "Look what the cat dragged in," one of them drawled, playing peasant, Hicks. The humiliation was instant and overwhelming, a public stripping of his last shred of dignity. Kyle froze, the shame washing over him in a cold wave. He wanted the ground to swallow him whole. All the progress had made, the small bits of self-respect had started to build, evaporated in that single cruel moment. He was once again the failed, spoiled heir, the butt of a joke he couldn't escape. He braced himself for the verbal assault, his fists clenched, feeling utterly powerless. He had no clever retort, no way to defend himself from the truth of their accusations. But before he could even utter a word, a surprise voice cut in, sharp and clear. "You should be ashamed of yourselves." It was London. She stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of Kyle, her posture radiating a fierce, protective energy that shocked him to his core. She wasn't intimidated by their expensive suits or their arrogant smirks. Her eyes, usually so calm and patient, now blazed with righteous anger. She was defending him. "You have no idea what kind of man he is," she continued, her voice unwavering. "You only saw his money, but we see his character. He's worth 10 of you." Her words were a shield, deflecting the poison they were spewing. The two men, taken aback by this fiery defense from a simple girl, were momentarily speechless. They had expected a humiliated coward, not a lioness defending her well, her what? The dynamic was a complete plot twist for everyone involved. In that moment, Kyle saw London in a whole new light. This girl from a poor family, who had every reason to resent him, was standing up for his honor. She was defending the man he was trying to become, not the man he had been. It was an act of loyalty and kindness so profound it left him breathless. It was the most heartaching and unexpected display of support he had ever received in his entire life. This was a turning point in their budding love story. The former associates, flustered and embarrassed by her fierce sincerity, eventually slunk away with a few parting insults. But their words had lost their sting. They couldn't touch him now. Kyle stood there, looking at London, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him: gratitude, astonishment, and something else. Something deeper and more significant. He was just beginning to understand that true loyalty couldn't be bought, and he felt the first real stirrings of true love. That evening, the atmosphere in the Barnes home was different. The incident in town had forged a new unspoken bond between Kyle and London. When they all sat down for dinner, the usual warmth felt amplified, more personal. Kyle looked around the table at the simple meal, the mismatched plates, and the faces of this poor family. For the first time, he wasn't just an observer, he felt like he was a part of the picture, a piece of this heart-aching tableau. The conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and the day's stories. Mr. Barnes recounted a funny story about a customer. Mrs. Barnes spoke proudly of her garden, and London playfully teased her father. There was no talk of business, no discussion of stock prices or acquisitions. The currency here was love, connection, and shared experience. It was an emotional richness that made his past, with its sterile formal dinners, feel utterly bankrupt. By comparison, Kyle found himself smiling, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He even chimed in with a story of his own, about his clumsy attempts to fix the fence, making fun of himself in a way he never would have before. London's laugh was the best reward he could have imagined. He realized that his lost fortune had bought him luxury, but it had never bought him this feeling of belonging, of being accepted for who he was, flaws and all. This was more than just a meal, it was a ceremony of family, a celebration of togetherness. He saw the way Mr. and Mrs. Barnes looked at each other, a lifetime of true love reflected in their gaze. He saw the way London looked at her parents, with a mixture of affection and deep respect. This was a home built not on foundations of concrete and steel, but on pillars of unwavering kindness and support. It was a powerful lesson in what truly matters. As he helped clear the dishes alongside London, a comfortable silence settled between them. The earlier tension was gone, replaced by a mutual respect. He was starting to see the world through her eyes, a world where wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in moments like these. This simple family dinner was a profound revelation, a key unlocking a part of his heart he didn't know existed. It was the real beginning of his redemption. He went to sleep that night, not with the familiar gnawing anxiety of his failure, but with a strange and unfamiliar feeling of peace. The spoiled heir was finally learning what it meant to be rich in spirit. He was part of something real, something tangible. And as he drifted off, a new thought sparked in his mind, a thought about London, not just as his defender or teacher, but as someone with a light of her own that the world needed to see. In the days that followed, Kyle started paying closer attention to London, not just her actions, but her words and her passions. He noticed her sketchbook, filled with intricate designs for handcrafted furniture made from reclaimed wood. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a vision. She had a brilliant, yet simple, idea for a business creating beautiful, bespoke pieces that told a story, breathing new life into forgotten materials. It was an idea brimming with potential and heart. He saw the spark in her eyes when she talked about it, a passion that was infectious. She spoke of sustainability, of craftsmanship, of creating things that last. It was a business philosophy that stood in stark contrast to the disposable, mass-produced world he came from. This wasn't about quick profits, it was about creating value and beauty. Her idea was a surprise, a hidden gem of entrepreneurial spirit in this humble home. However, he also saw the shadow of doubt that always followed her excitement. When he pressed her on why she hadn't pursued it, she would shrug and dismiss it as a silly dream. Who would buy furniture from someone like me? She'd say, her voice tinged with an insecurity that broke his heart. She, who was so strong and confident in every other aspect of her life, lacked the confidence to believe in her own brilliant idea. The girl from the poor family couldn't see her own worth. It was a classic case of potential paralyzed by fear. London had the talent, the vision, and the work ethic, but she didn't have the self-belief. She was trapped by the circumstances of her birth, conditioned to think that big dreams were for other people, for the wealthy, for the spoiled heir she thought Kyle still was. She couldn't see the path from her sketchbook to a real, thriving business. Her lack of confidence was the only thing holding her back from her destiny. Kyle, on the other hand, saw the path perfectly. All his dormant business acumen, the skills he thought were useless now that his fortune was lost, came rushing back. He saw the marketing angles, the target demographic, the production strategy. He saw a gold mine, not just financially, but emotionally. This was a business with a soul, a story that would resonate with people. It was an opportunity for overcoming, not just for her, but for him too. A new purpose began to form within him. For the first time since losing everything, he felt a familiar thrill not of making money, but of building something. He could help her. He could give her the one thing she lacked: a roadmap and the belief that it was possible. This was his second chance, a way to use his knowledge not for selfish gain, but to empower someone who truly deserved it. Their love story was about to become a business partnership. Kyle approached London not as a savior, but as a partner. "Your idea is brilliant," he began, "and I think I know how to make it happen." He laid out a simple business plan on their kitchen table, using his dormant business acumen to translate her creative vision into a tangible strategy. He spoke of branding, of finding a niche market, of starting small and building organically. He wasn't the arrogant spoiled heir anymore, he was a mentor, an ally. At first, London was hesitant, her old insecurities creeping in, but as Kyle talked, she saw a different side of him. He wasn't condescending, he was enthusiastic, respectful of her craft, and genuinely excited about her potential. He listened to her ideas, building upon them, refining them. He saw the value in her work that she couldn't see in herself. Slowly, her doubt began to be replaced by a fragile spark of hope, a surprise to her own heart. They began to work together every evening, their heads bent over her sketchbook, which had now become their business ledger. He taught her about profit margins and marketing, and she taught him about the soul of craftsmanship. In working together, they formed a deep and unexpected bond. Their conversation shifted from business to dreams, fears, and stories from their vastly different pasts. They were two halves of a whole, her creativity, and his strategy, a perfect team. The small house buzzed with a new energy. There was a sense of purpose, of excitement for the future. Mr. and Mrs. Barnes watched with quiet pride as their daughter blossomed under Kyle's guidance. The project was more than just a business. It was a journey of redemption for him and empowerment for her. It was a testament to the power of a second chance for both of them. Their collaboration was creating more than just a business plan. It was building the foundations of true love. Kyle had never felt more alive. This was infinitely more satisfying than simply inheriting a fortune. He was creating something from scratch, using his skills to lift someone else up. He was discovering a new kind of success, one that filled him with a warmth and pride his billions had never provided. He was falling for London, not just for her kindness or her beauty, but for her talent, her spirit, and the incredible woman she was becoming. Their partnership was a beautiful plot twist in both their lives. The humiliated heir was finding his purpose, and the girl with a dream was finding her voice. They were no longer just a man who had lost everything and a woman who had little. They were partners, equals, building a future together. But as their bond deepened and their business started to take its first fragile steps, an old shadow was about to fall upon the Barnes family home. It wasn't just the business that was growing, it was Kyle himself. Every day spent with London was like an antidote to the poison of bitterness that had coursed through his veins. Her unwavering kindness, her gentle perspective, and her simple joy in small things began to heal the deep wounds of his pride and loss. He started to see the world not as a place that had taken everything from him, but as a place full of hidden beauty, a beauty he had been too blind to see before. He started to notice the little things, the way London would leave food out for a stray cat, or how she'd take the time to talk to an elderly neighbor who was lonely. She moved through the world with a compassionate grace that was utterly foreign to him. He started to see the world through her compassionate eyes, and the view was breathtaking. It was a world where human connection was the most valuable asset, a heart-aching revelation for the former billionaire. His internal monologue began to change. The constant loop of resentment and self-pity was gradually replaced by thoughts of gratitude. He was grateful for a warm bed, for a home-cooked meal, for the chance to do honest work. He was grateful for the Barnes family, this poor family who had shown him the meaning of generosity. Most of all, he was grateful for London. She was his teacher, his partner, his guiding star in the journey of overcoming his past self. This emotional transformation was subtle but profound. He laughed more freely, he listened more intently, and he offered help without being asked. The hardened shell of the spoiled heir was cracking, revealing a softer, more empathetic man underneath. London's kindness was the catalyst, the gentle rain that was encouraging new growth in the barren landscape of his soul. His redemption was becoming a reality, one day at a time. He realized that his old life, for all its glamour, had been emotionally sterile. He had been surrounded by people, but he had been profoundly lonely. Here, in the small, crowded house, he felt a sense of connection he had never experienced. This was real. This was true. The love story unfolding was not just between him and London, but between him and a whole new way of living, a life of meaning and purpose. He was falling deeply in love with London, a love born not from status or convenience, but from genuine admiration and a deep emotional bond. She had saved him, not by giving him money or a place to stay, but by showing him a better way to be a man. But just as he was embracing this new hope-filled reality, a harsh reminder of the world's cruelty was about to threaten the very family who had saved him. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, a stark white envelope that felt cold and menacing in Mrs. Barnes' trembling hands. It was an eviction notice. The landlord was selling the property, and they had 30 days to vacate the only home they had ever known. The news descended like a suffocating fog, choking the laughter and warmth that usually filled the small house. The cruel reality of their precarious life had come crashing down on them, a devastating plot twist. Kyle watched the color drain from their faces, and a profound gut-wrenching shame washed over him. He, Kyle Hicks, who once could have bought this entire city block with a flick of his wrist, was now utterly powerless to help them. His lost fortune had never felt more like a phantom limb, an ache for a power he no longer possessed. He was a guest in their home, another mouth to feed, and now, another burden in their time of crisis. The humiliation was deeper than any he had felt before. He saw the fear in Mr. Barnes' eyes, cleverly masked for the sake of his family, and the quiet despair on Mrs. Barnes' face. He saw London, his strong, resilient London, struggling to hold back tears as she tried to comfort her parents. This poor family, who had taken him in and shown him nothing but kindness, was about to lose everything. And he, the former spoiled heir, could do nothing but stand by and watch. The feeling of helplessness was suffocating. All his newfound purpose, all the progress he had made, felt like a cruel joke. What good was his business acumen if he couldn't even help the people who mattered most to him? He felt like a fraud. He had been so focused on his own redemption that he had forgotten the harsh realities they faced every single day. Their struggle was his struggle now, and the weight of it was crushing his spirit. This was a test of his transformation. The irony was crushing. He had come to them with nothing, and they had given him everything that mattered. Now when they needed something tangible, something only money could buy, he was empty-handed. The shame was a physical thing, a knot in his stomach and a burning in his chest. This emotional crisis was a far greater challenge than any business failure he had ever faced. It was a direct hit to his evolving sense of self. He retreated into himself, the old bitterness threatening to resurface. He was a failure. He had failed his old life, and now he was failing the people who had given him a second chance. He paced his small room late into the night, his mind racing. There had to be something he could do. He couldn't let them lose their home. As his eyes scanned his few meager possessions, they landed on the one last link to his former life. An idea, desperate and sacrificial, began to form. The object was a luxury watch, a ridiculously expensive timepiece his father had given him for his 21st birthday. It was the last symbol of his former wealth, a tangible link to the spoiled heir he once was. He had kept it hidden, partly out of sentiment, partly as a secret security blanket. But now looking at it, he didn't see a status symbol. He saw a solution. He saw a way to give back a fraction of the kindness the Barnes family had shown him. Making the decision was one thing, acting on it was another. He walked to the pawn shop with the watch heavy in his pocket and his heart even heavier in his chest. This wasn't just selling an object, it was severing the final tie to his past, letting go of the ghost of his lost fortune for good. This pivotal moment wasn't for his own survival or comfort, it was a selfless act, the first truly selfless thing he had ever done in his life. His redemption was taking a concrete form. The pawnbroker, a man with cynical eyes, was surprised by the watch's quality. He offered a sum that was a pittance compared to its actual value. But to Kyle, it felt like a king's ransom. It was enough. It was enough to give the Barnes family a fighting chance, to secure a new place, to ease their immediate burden. As he walked out of the shop, his wrist felt strangely light, but his soul felt weightier, more substantial than ever before. He presented the money to Mr. and Mrs. Barnes that evening, not with a flourish of pride, but with a quiet, humble sincerity. "You took me in when I had nothing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Please let me do this for you." The family was speechless, tears welling up in their eyes. It wasn't about the amount of money, it was the heart-aching sacrifice behind it. They saw that his transformation was complete. He was one of them now. London looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. It was a mixture of awe, gratitude, and a deep, profound love. In that single act, he had proven the man he had become. He had chosen family over legacy, kindness over vanity. The last remnant of the arrogant boy she had first met was gone, replaced by a man of honor and integrity. This act of sacrifice was the climax of their love story, a testament to his change. Kyle felt a sense of peace he had never known. For the first time, he felt truly free from his past. He had given away the last piece of his old life, but in doing so, he had solidified his place in a new one. He had found his true fortune. However, destiny, it seems, has a flair for the dramatic. Just as he embraced his new life, a ghost from his past was about to reappear, bringing with her a temptation he thought he had long since overcome. Her name was Beatrice, and she appeared like a mirage from a life he no longer recognized. She found him outside the barn's small home, her luxury car a stark alien presence on the humble street. She looked him up and down, her expression a cocktail of pity and amusement. Kyle's exfiancy, the woman who had vanished the second his fortune did, was back. And she wasn't just there to say hello, she was there to present him with a shocking plot twist. She explained that her father, a man of immense power and influence, had orchestrated a deal. A path had been cleared for Kyle's return. The lost fortune could be reclaimed, his name restored, his old life handed back to him on a silver platter. It was a surprise offer, a literal second chance at the life he had lost. The world of a spoiled heir was once again within his grasp, a dazzling and seductive possibility. But of course, there was a catch. There always is. The offer was conditional. He had to sever all ties with his current life. He had to leave the Barnes family, this poor family that had dragged him down, as Beatrice so delicately put it. He had to abandon London. He had to walk away and never look back, pretending this entire chapter of his life, this journey of redemption, had never happened. He had to erase the very people who had saved his soul. The proposition hung in the air, a toxic temptation. Beatrice painted a vivid picture of what he could have again: the penthouse apartments, the respect, the power. She spoke of their future. Together, a future he had once dreamed of. She made it sound so easy, so logical. "This isn't your world, Kyle," she whispered, her voice a silky poison. "You don't belong here with these people. Come back to where you belong." The emotional weight of her offer was immense. Kyle looked from Beatrice's perfectly manicured nails and designer dress to the chipped paint on the barn's front door. Behind that door was warmth, laughter, and a love he had never known was possible. With Beatrice was a world of cold, hard, transactional relationships, a world that had left him humiliated and alone the moment things got tough. He was being offered a choice between two entirely different definitions of wealth, of life, of love. He was standing at the ultimate crossroads of his destiny. One path led back to the man he was, powerful but empty. The other path led forward with the man he had become, poor, perhaps, but filled with a love and purpose he wouldn't trade for anything. The choice should have been difficult, a monumental struggle between his past and his present. But as he looked into Beatrice's cold, calculating eyes, he realized the decision had already been made in his heart. The choice Beatrice presented felt, on the surface, impossible. It was a scale, weighing a mountain of gold against a single perfect feather. On one side, there was the empty wealth he once knew, a life of endless luxury, where every desire was met, but no real need was ever fulfilled. It was a life of applause from strangers and the deafening silence of a lonely penthouse. He remembered the hollowness, the constant pressure to maintain an image, a life that was ultimately a gilded cage. On the other side was the rich life he had found in poverty with London. It was a life of hardship and struggle, yes, but it was also a life filled with authentic joy and meaning. It was the satisfaction of a hard day's work, the warmth of a genuine family dinner, the heart-aching feeling of being loved for exactly who you are. This life wasn't easy, but it was real. It was a life where he was building something, not just inheriting it. He thought of London. He pictured her smile, her fierce loyalty, the way she believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale of princes and princesses. It was a story of two people finding strength in each other, a story of overcoming and redemption. She was the anchor that had stopped him from drifting away into bitterness. To leave her would be to abandon the best part of himself, the part she had helped him discover. This wasn't just a choice between a woman and a fortune. It was a choice about his very soul. To go back with Beatrice would be to admit that his entire transformation was a sham, a temporary phase brought on by desperation. It would mean that the spoiled heir had won after all. It would mean turning his back on the profound kindness. The Barnes family had shown him an act of betrayal so deep it would shatter him completely. It would be the ultimate act of self-humiliation. The memories of his old life flashed before his eyes, but they had lost their luster. The fast cars, the expensive parties, the fawning friends, it all seemed like a cheap imitation of happiness. Now, he had tasted true love. He had experienced genuine connection, and he knew, with an unshakable certainty, that it was infinitely more valuable than any amount of money. The lost fortune was no longer lost, it had been traded for something far greater. So the impossible choice was, in fact, the easiest one he had ever had to make. His destiny was not a return to the past, but a future he would build with his own two hands, alongside the woman he loved. The final confrontation was at hand. He had to give Beatrice his answer, and in doing so, close the door on his old life forever, with no regrets. He was about to choose his real inheritance. As he stood before Beatrice, the clarity was blinding. Kyle realized in a moment of profound emotional truth that London's love and her family's acceptance were worth more than any inheritance he ever had. The billions of dollars, the sprawling estates, the entire empire he had been born into, all paled in comparison to the simple, heart-aching gift of being truly seen and loved. That was the real fortune he had been searching for his entire life without even knowing it. His inheritance had been a burden, a set of golden shackles that dictated his worth and his relationships. But the love he received from the Barnes family was liberating. It was unconditional. They had taken him in when he was at his most humiliated, when he had nothing to offer but his own brokenness. Their acceptance wasn't an investment, it was a gift. It was a lesson in kindness that had completely reshaped his understanding of value. He thought about the concept of true love. With Beatrice, love had been a merger, a transaction, a partnership of status and convenience. With London, love was a collaboration of souls. It was patient, it was fierce, it was about building each other up. It was working together on a dream, defending each other's honor, and finding joy in the quiet moments. This was the love story he wanted to live, the only one that mattered. The idea of returning to his old life now felt like a prison sentence. He would be a ghost, haunting the halls of a life that no longer fit him. He had changed too much, learned too much, felt too much. The spoiled heir was well and truly gone, replaced by a man who measured his wealth in love, purpose, and the calluses on his hands. There was no going back. The path of redemption had led him here, to this moment of absolute certainty. The surprise wasn't that he had to make a choice, but how easy it was. The struggle was over. He had already been living the richer life. Beatrice was offering him a beautifully wrapped empty box, while he already held a treasure in his hands. He felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. He was no longer defined by the fortune he lost, but by the love he had found. He knew what he had to do. It wasn't just about rejecting Beatrice's offer, it was about declaring his allegiance to his new life, to his new family, and to the woman who was his everything. He had to honor the second chance he had been given. He took a deep breath, ready to speak the words that would seal his destiny, not as an heir to a fortune, but as a partner in a life built on love. No, the word was quiet, but it landed with the force of a thunderclap. Kyle looked Beatrice directly in the eye, his gaze steady and clear. My answer is no. In not going back, there was no anger in his voice, only a calm finality. He rejected his past not with bitterness, but with the quiet confidence of a man who knows his own worth. He was choosing London, choosing the Barnes family, choosing this new, authentic life. Beatrice was stunned into silence, her perfectly crafted composure finally cracking. She couldn't comprehend his choice. To her, he was throwing away everything. For nothing, you're choosing them? This poverty? She stammered, gesturing with disgust at the humble surroundings. Her disbelief was the final confirmation for Kyle that he was making the right decision. She would never understand. She couldn't see the fortune that was right in front of him. You call it poverty, Kyle replied, a small smile playing on his lips. I call it wealth. He then turned, and with Beatrice as his unwilling audience, he made a public declaration to anyone who might be listening. The fortune I lost was just money. It was empty. This poor family, he said, his voice filled with pride and emotion. They took me in when I was humiliated and broken. They gave me a second chance. They taught me the meaning of true fortune. He continued, his words a powerful testament to his journey. They taught me about kindness, about dignity, about overcoming adversity. And London, he said, his voice softening. As he spoke her name, she taught me the meaning of true love. A love that isn't bought or sold, but earned and cherished. His speech was a culmination of his entire redemption, a final definitive statement of who he now was. This was the ultimate plot twist in the story of the spoiled heir. He wasn't saved by reclaiming his money, he was saved by giving it all away, metaphorically and literally. His public declaration wasn't just for Beatrice, it was for himself. It was the final step in shedding his old skin, in embracing the man he had fought so hard to become. He was choosing his destiny, and it was a destiny intertwined with London and her family. Beatrice, defeated and disgusted, finally drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and the ghost of a forgotten life behind. Kyle stood there for a moment, feeling the sun on his face. He felt free. He had faced his greatest temptation and had not wavered. He turned and walked back toward the house, back to his home, back to his future, knowing with every fiber of his being that the greatest love story is not about finding a treasure, but about becoming one. And so, the story of the spoiled heir comes to an end, but in reality, it's a beautiful new beginning. What a powerful journey we've witnessed together. We saw a man, Kyle Hicks, lose a massive fortune only to find an invaluable treasure in the most unexpected of places, the heart of a poor family and the love of an incredible woman, London Barnes. It's a heart-aching reminder that our lowest moments can often lead to our greatest redemptions, and that true wealth has absolutely nothing to do with a bank account. His final choice rejecting the empty allure of his past for a future rich in love and purpose is the ultimate testament to his transformation. It proves that kindness is a current stronger than greed, and that a second chance, when truly embraced, can reshape our very destiny. This was more than just a love story. It was a story about overcoming the poverty within ourselves and discovering the fortune that lies in human connection. Now I'd love to hear from you. What was the one moment in this emotional story that impacted you the most? Was it when London fiercely defended his honor on the street? Or perhaps the pivotal moment when Kyle sold his last possession to help her family? Share your favorite part in the comments below. We read every single one. And tell us, did you see that ending coming? Were you expecting a different plot twist? Or are you happy with the beautiful desfecho that Kyle and London created for themselves? Let us know if you liked the ending or what you would have done in his shoes. Your perspective is what makes this community so special. If this story of redemption and true love resonated with you, Please show your support by giving this video a like, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the powerful new stories we have coming for you. While you wait for our next video, why not explore some of the other stories we've shared on our channel? There are many more journeys of overcoming, surprise, and heart-aching moments for you to discover. Thank you for spending your time with US Today. Remember, the best stories are the ones that remind us of what it means to be human.